story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Action! Welcome to WTF World. We have settled on our new show name. It'll probably change again because we're
next
like
week. We'll have a new name
next week. But we've been talking a lot about world politics and world events as well as ones close to home, and we like to do that. So WTF the whole world. So welcome to our show. Today we have our favorite people yet again, John and Dirk, coming to us from Las Vegas, and Tali from an undisclosed location somewhere near Colorado. And I'm Rachel, and beside me here is Ariel, and we're coming to you from Santa Cruz, California. And today we're going to talk about things that are happening in the world, but kind of centered around our top story, which is schoolgirls being poisoned in Iran, which harkens back to a time that schoolgirls were being poisoned in Afghanistan. And it's kind of serious and not so fun. But, you know, hatred and trying to curb that is something that is important to all of us. So we're talking about it. Ariel, would you like to share your insight?
So I was going to bring it up on last week's show when I'd seen that it was 650 girls since November. Then I was seeing NBC saying it was over 1,000. Apparently now they're saying, this other source is saying 1,200 girls have been poisoned by toxic gas. They have generally recovered without issue, but problem.
Well, that was just 1,200 as of last week, but in Iran, they're saying 7,000 students have been affected.
Yeah.
So it's more and more, and it's spread across more areas too. It's not just single incidents, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
all over the country, there are people claiming that it's just psychosomatic because no specific cause has been found. Although the Iranian government has just sort of decided to launch an investigation. There were incidents similar to this in Afghanistan in 2012 and 2015, and similarly, those times people also said, oh, well, it might just be psychosomatic, which seems like a stretch, but I mean, schoolgirls in Iran are certainly under an enormous amount of psychological pressure.
So how are they being poisoned?
So they were saying that they're often reporting smells of, oh God, I'm blanking right now. It was tangerines or something else that smells terrible and nothing like tangerines in one's mind. But generally symptoms of dizziness, fatigue, nausea, generally recovering without incident. One girl was unable to walk for a week. One girl claimed that she'd been poisoned twice and ended up in the hospital, but that the principal of her school just said that it was because she had a heart condition.
Well, not to get totally sidetracked, but we also just the other day put out a statement about Havana syndrome that says the same thing, that it's like all psychosomatic and that nothing happened, like that we're sure of it, but also not. So shut up, I guess.
What's Havana syndrome relating to? Or I mean, what's the syndrome in that case?
Don't you remember they were talking about microwaves or sonic waves or something? That all of the
starting
in the embassy.
Around 2011.
Yeah, in the American embassy in Havana.
Our CIA agents and people in Cuba were getting
in the consulate.
They would, like, people were reporting like waking up in the middle of the night with like a terrible headache, throwing up, and then like they might look outside
yeah.
and see like a van speed away or something.
I remember that, and I wasn't sure if it was like sonic poisoning or if they were being gassed or something.
They think that it might have been some sort of sonic weapon, and there are a ton of these people, and these are people who are like very seriously vetted. These are like CIA agents. These are not people who make up bullshit all the time.
Yeah, they're State Department employees, and
yeah.
And my prediction about the thing in Iran is probably within the next week or so, you'll probably see the Iranian government saying that that the hijab, is that what it's called, the headdress, the headwear,
Yeah.
that will prevent whatever symptoms these girls are having.
That's terrible and true.
Did you see the not to get too far off the topic, but did you see the study that was done, I want to say by MIT, on whether or not tinfoil hats work?
Yeah. I did see some reference
so they
to
actually increase the transmission of certain frequencies, hilariously, specifically ones that are generally used only by the military.
Yeah.
So basically, the tinfoil hat makes you more susceptible to government mind control.
Oh,
Which
no!
makes a lot more sense to me, seeing as how most people used to put tinfoil on their TV antennas.
Right?
Interesting.
I mean,
Back in the
unless
old
potentially,
days.
I think it might be different if you can encase your entire head in tinfoil, but that would require some decapitation, which tends to have adverse health effects.
Yeah.
It's better
Then
if
you're
you
just
have a
turning your
tinfoil
brain
room.
Then
A
you're just
whole
turning your
room.
brain into popcorn.
Yeah, it's like, you know,
if you
have
go
a
out, if you
hole
go out in
in
the sun, yeah.
Like if you have a hole in, the radiation can just get in and then bounce around in there. And so it needs to be like a closed thing that it can't get under. I guess it's more like a sound wave, but yeah, it needs to not have a way in. But the full facial tinfoil hat, you know, maybe those government waves actually feel good.
Yeah, I don't know. I was listening to some of these people describing the Havana syndrome, and it sounds awful.
Yeah, that sounds bad. I mean, and of course, like whenever something, if they're testing a weapon, if they're doing weird things, they're never going to come out until maybe years later, if ever, and say like, oh yeah, we were experimenting on people. Like they often won't say that
Well,
until,
I mean,
you know, sometimes it's uncovered
like
way later.
Well, and even if it wasn't,
it probably wasn't our government like testing something.
Oh, no, it wouldn't be ours. Nope, not ours.
But I mean,
Well,
if they discovered
in
what it is,
Cuba, it probably wasn't our government. Like,
I mean,
attacking.
even if it wasn't our government, though, if they discovered what it was and it seemed like something potentially weaponizable or potentially useful, then they probably wouldn't want to announce publicly what it was.
That is a good point.
Did any of you?
The problem with that is that if I remember correctly, some of those people are still suffering symptoms.
Yeah.
It's lasting a long time.
Yeah.
And by classifying it as psychosomatic, you can get out of giving them actual treatment.
Did any of you see the movie Red?
No.
With John Malkovich and Bruce Willis?
Oh yeah, I actually did.
Where John Malkovich's character had been dosed with LSD for every day for 10 years.
Interesting.
As part of a government study.
Did they do that to you?
I mean, you'd have to be on an insanely high dose.
I was just 3 years.
To still have some effect.
Mine was only 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with the Iran thing, it seems like their health ministry has come out to say that some kind of thing that's been inhaled, gay drugs, something that's been inhaled is been, you know, identified, and that people are suffering respiratory problems because of it. And it's kind of interesting, like their supreme leader, Ali Khamenei.
Ali Baba?
I guess he's, you know, I don't know if they have a president, but it's their ruler. He's called to persecute women who reject the modesty laws, but he's also condemned these poisonings. But it's kind of, he's pretty much, you know, saying one thing, but then wanting to punish people who act out to promote the exact kind of thing that he also has been outspoken against, which is more freedom of, facial expression.
Right.
And I guess Iranian security forces as well arrested the first editor who published a story on the poisonings, as well as like when Masa Amini, the woman who was imprisoned and then beat to death for not wearing a facial covering, 2 female journalists covered that story and were also put in jail for that.
Well,
and so,
they're
like,
saying that journalists are also being poisoned.
Yeah, well, there's not freedom of
Right,
speech.
like anyone who's there to cover this is also getting poisoned.
So being that there's all these reports of it and all these stories coming out of it, in spite of there being limited and threatened freedom of speech, like, it's definitely happening. And it's like, I feel like it's kind of, and I wonder if there's a coordinated underground effort within Iran, like a big team of people doing this, or if it's a bunch of people acting out as individuals to do this. And it's like, it's tough to know. I don't know about if they're like underground Iranian, sort of like, the underground, like the Taliban or something. Like if there's like an underground terrorist organization in Iran that's large enough and orchestrated enough to distribute poison to a bunch of different people, to have a bunch of different schools poisoned throughout the country. People have been protesting it.
Why would they do that and make it underground when you have, first of all, one of the greatest leaders and developers of terrorist organizations and sponsors of terrorist organizations is the Quds Force in Iran. So if there was anything like that going on in that country, they know about it. They probably had something to do with it. The other thing that makes me curious about that is that I would think that the people that were underground would be those. I mean, why would they be arresting these people that are telling that story?
While simultaneously condemning the actions. I mean,
well, I mean, if they only recently announced that they were launching an investigation. Up till that point, they've just been sort of dismissing it. So I think there's recently been a shift where, prior to that, anybody who was reporting on it was contradicting the official narrative.
Well, I just personally believe that all the stuff that I've learned about Iranian forces and the Quds Force, especially, those guys are assholes. That sounds like something that they would definitely be well into.
What is this? Are you saying Quds Force?
Yeah, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's Quds.
Okay.
They're like, I don't even know how to describe it. They're like a combination of the CIA
and the KGB.
Yeah,
so they're government.
They're an elite organization in the government, primarily military, that does a lot of the sponsoring of terrorist organizations, supports and training of terrorist organizations. These guys are badass. They're really scary. And they're also really good at going out in different countries. They would be equivalent, I guess, to like the Green Beret, who originally were designed to go into countries and train people that were resistant forces and stuff like that. Well, these guys are trained to go into countries and destabilize governments. So, and they're really, really good at it.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder with that, like, I mean, I'm just curious about the politics of it. It's like, if these protests haven't made Iran look good to the rest of the world, they brought a lot of, I would say, unwanted foreign attention to the country and to the government. And it's like, what's like the more people that they torture, like the more people that they abuse them because of, abuse human rights, they get more attention from foreign journalists and more attention from the rest of the world being like, shame on you for doing this. How can we stop Iran from doing this to its citizens? How can we help the women there not be abused and having their rights taken away? It's like, how does creating even more hubbub about it, like if the government's behind it, or if factions of the government are behind poisoning schoolgirls, is it just to terrorize people and make them all afraid so that they fall in line with the scrutiny of the outside world, or what?
Yeah.
I don't think it's government, because if the government wanted to, it could just shut down these schools. And then so it's clearly people who don't want girls to be in school, but it does seem very targeted, because they're not, if they were just straight up killing people, if this were lethal, then they would have the populace turned against them. So it is a way that they're trying to keep girls from getting an education and send a message that your children are not safe in schools, or you're not safe in schools, without going so far as to enrage the public.
Well, that would be a perfect reason for the government. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, also, yeah, I mean, I think that if the government wanted the schools closed, it would just close the schools. Also,
But what about public backlash? It's a way to convince people to not go to school while still having the image of keeping schools open.
Yeah.
The thing also, apparently, the smell, I had to double check because I was trying to remember, was tangerines or rotten fish, which seem to me like very different smells, which makes me wonder if it's various chemicals potentially being used, which would suggest maybe not central coordination, but that is very little to go on.
What were you going to say, Dirk?
Well, it's just the whole thing is really odd. And the one thing that we have to understand about Iran is that they do not think like we think. And a lot of the times when we get in trouble in the United States is that we think that everybody's like the United States, the government's like the United States, and we think that if this person's a leader and that he's going to do this, and it doesn't work like that. Especially in the Middle East, they've got a whole different way of looking at things, and I don't even know how to process it. But I did look up Quds Force, and it's one of the 5 branches of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, specializing in unconventional warfare and military intelligence operations. The U.S. Army's Iraq War General Stanley McChrystal describes the Quds Force as an organization analogous to a combination of the CIA and the Joint Special Operations Command of the United States. So they support non-state actors in many countries, including Hezbollah, Hamas, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Yemeni Houthis, and the Shia militias in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan.
But they've got some great beards.
Yeah, well, that too. So that's kind of where we are with that.
Yeah.
So I can't. I mean, a lot of what you're saying makes sense, Ariel. I agree with you, but still, that just sounds like something they might be involved in to terrorize people, because that's one of the things they're really good at, terrorizing their own people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like if you're a parent, are you going to want to send your kid to school if you think they're going to get gassed? But it doesn't seem like nobody's died from this gas. People have sent to the hospital for trouble breathing, but it's like they're not killing anybody. And but I don't know if it's like, we don't know what the substance is. So it's like, who knows if there's long-term respiratory damage.
Right. Or just they haven't killed anybody yet.
Yeah, I guess, you find the right person with asthma and that kind of a thing is going to mess them up.
Or a neurological condition.
Still, I mean, yeah.
Right.
Agreed, but if you've poisoned 1,200 children without any fatalities yet, it does seem to indicate some effort being taken to not kill people.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that is the case.
Well, I mean, and if there were fatalities, would we necessarily be finding out about it?
Right.
That's also true.
I guess, I don't know, you were talking about like whether it's good or not, I guess, to be talking about this so widely or something. I don't know. But yesterday, this actually kind of reminded me more of our situation in the United States. Yesterday was Purim, and so while baking like batch after batch of Hamantaschen, Well,
You're a better Jew than I.
I like to cook.
So if you're not Jewish and you don't know about Purim, what is it?
Right. Okay. So we tell the story. Like that is every year we're supposed to tell the story.
What
And it's
story?
not a religious holiday so much as like we celebrate something that happened in Iran 1700-ish years ago.
Wait, Purim is about celebrating something that happened in Iran?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Ooh, tell the story.
So in Iran, there was a very wealthy man, Haman the Agagite, and he was in good with Xerxes. And I'll make the story short, but or as short as can be. Haman the Agagite got Xerxes very drunk because that's what he did, or that's what they did, and convinced him one night to that he should kill all of the Jews.
Okay. And Xerxes is the leader of
Persia at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, Xerxes is of the infamous 300 Spartans story.
AKA
okay.
Achashverosh.
Yes. Yes, we call him Achashverosh, but
That's cool
most
sounding.
people call him Xerxes. And so Xerxes was like, yeah, they sound pretty bad because basically Haman the Agagite owed a lot of money to a Jew and didn't want to pay it back. So a lot of people like to say that we do things with money and power. And so that's what he convinced Xerxes of. And so Xerxes signed an edict that everyone in Iran could kill Jews on a certain day.
Oh, Jew killing day.
Which they were drunk and gambling, and he like basically rolled the dice and was like, "Oh, okay, that's the day we'll do this."
So now they call it the purge.
The first version of the purge. Yes, exactly.
But
Man.
but only against Jews.
Man.
So, a lot of Jews tried to just like get in good with government or make really good friends with their neighbors. Nobody really knew exactly what to do, and
so the Jews knew this was coming.
Yeah,
right. It was publicized.
Right. But even before that, there was one brave man named Mordecai who was like, I got to do something. So he had a very beautiful niece and convinced her to be brave and get in with Xerxes. Mm-hmm. And so she married Xerxes and became his favorite wife. And so she ended up, he couldn't know that she was Jewish.
Oh yeah.
Right. So that was a secret. But
it was a different time period. You didn't have like the fro and.
So eventually she worked up the nerve to go to him and tell him that she was Jewish. And he said, oh crap, this is really bad. You're my favorite and I don't want you to die. Ooh. So for some reason, he couldn't just like put forth another royal edict that was like, you can't kill Jews.
Right. Everyone was already all riled up.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead, he put out this royal edict that we could defend ourselves.
Oh.
And so we did. And we won. And we hanged Haman the Agagite and all of his Haman juniors. And that's why there are still Jews in Iran. Unfortunately, unfortunately, there are still Jews in Iran. And so that is what we celebrate every year on Purim. And the story is called, we call it the Megillah. So when somebody says the whole Megillah, that's what they mean. It's this really long story. And
wait, is that what Hava Nagila is about?
No, but
oh man, I've been asking that forever.
But telling the story yesterday, telling the
That's a hell of
story
a story.
yesterday felt very like more like what's happening here, kind of the rumblings. And
I love how Ariel's description of this holiday, all that I remember from it was you get really drunk and eat cookies. I didn't even hear the story.
I
yeah,
said
so
like
we
most Jewish holidays, someone tried to kill us all. They failed, so
Oh, yeah,
now
okay.
we dress up and get drunk and eat cookies and tell the story.
But your sister's description was the meaning of the whole purpose of it all was to tell the story, and your
right, well,
highlight of it
we
was
are supposed to
Well, I
every
try
year.
to have the sound bite for a certain attention span.
So we make triangular jam-filled cookies called Hamantaschen, which means Haman.
But are they made of? Is there sugar in said cookies? Because Ariel's like, I think the dough is just made of flour and
No, then
water.
I thought more of it, and I changed my tune on that.
The dough is mostly flour and powdered sugar.
Oh, there we go.
That's
And
actually
they're
a pretty good
triangular
story.
because allegedly Haman had triangular ears, and we eat his ears.
Whoa,
But
whoa.
you are supposed to get so drunk that you don't know the difference between good and evil.
Between the
You're supposed
hero
to-
and the villain of the story.
And you're supposed to dress up in you dress up in a costume. It's our Halloween, basically. But the most important thing is that you tell the whole story. And
Wow.
so that you remember that this can happen. And
Now you're coming up with one more. This story is just one more reason why things are so fucking complicated in the Middle East. It's so hard to unravel this shit.
Yeah, right.
But
That is
Holy
interesting.
crap.
But
Yeah, I
I
never
think-
heard that story before, so that's fascinating.
Yeah, I've never heard it before.
it's a good one. But I like that we tell our stories, and you're supposed to tell the whole story every year and remind yourself that these things can happen. And so I think it's the same, like it's the same with anything like this, like the girls being in Iran now being poisoned. Like as much as it is like scary to
Every culture has their stories, their origin stories, or their belief stories, or whatever. I mean, they're the world is full of them.
I want to hear at the end of what Tal was saying.
Oh, well, this one is like this isn't like a biblical story. It's not like a God said this or something, like maybe this happened, maybe it didn't happen. Like the story of Purim happened. Like it was 300 something AD. Like it's in the history books. We know that one happened. Like we know Xerxes was real because 300, obviously 100% true.
Because he's in Civilization, the game,
Yeah.
as one of the rulers you can play.
And because I played him in a Hebrew school play.
Oh yeah. There's a stamp of approval and validation right there.
So
Also-
like these are the important stories to tell. Like, I mean, if you're religious and you like to like share Bible stories, that's cool and fine too. But I think that these are the stories that are important to tell. And I think the like it's tempting to not sometimes talk about things that are presently happening because we're worried that things might get worse for those girls or something. But I think the right way to go is to make sure that everybody does know about it and that these girls aren't like just silently killed. And
I think in our culture, and in Jewish culture, I mean, a lot of it is like at some point, part of the telling of the story is like, we won. The good people prevailed. The bad guy went down. And I wonder with some of these stories, if it's like hundreds and hundreds of years of persecution with no end. Like right now, like the story in Iran is like, for the past 40 years, they've gotten less and less and less rights. Like that women have had their rights taken away. The country's gotten more of a dictatorship. It's just gotten worse. And so it's like, it's nice to like, 1,000, 2,000 years later be like, stuff happened and we won. But like some of these stories are, I'd like to hope that someday there'll be a winner. But it's like, how do we ensure, like, like with, this country, like Dirk was saying, we don't know what they think about how their country is ruled or what their ideals or their values are. Like, it's hard to see what's happening there from that perspective. And I think I read something about this when that woman was killed. A lot of Iranian people were like, the more pushback from the West that happens, the harsher it is here for us. And so it's like, how do we make sure, and how do we in any way, like, telling the story about how these girls were abused is one thing. But like, how does that actually do anything about what's happening to these people or make it so that the outcome is good?
Well, two things about that. First of all, I didn't look at that as a story about just we won, because to me, it's a story about a guy who had some friend that came up to him, told him some bullshit. He goes ahead and comes up with an edict that's full of this crap.
Right.
Just get rid of a bunch of people. And then he figures out, oh, gee,
because he owed somebody money.
And so then he basically tells the people, well, you can fight back. And so, yes, then they end up winning. But I mean, that's just another one of those things where, you got a ruler who's a fucking idiot and he's influenced by his friends.
Yeah, rulers are idiots is maybe a better theme.
The other thing is that, and this is one of the things that I think that Americans really have the most difficult time understanding, is when you look at countries like Russia, China, Iran, those kinds of people, they look at the long game. Americans are very, we want to get something done right now.
Instant gratification.
They try to get everything done right now, instant gratification. But when it comes to these countries, they do shit with a lot of,
generational,
a lot of future planning, and they'll do one little thing that doesn't seem like it's a lot, but it's going to mean something 10 years from now. And we don't get that. So I don't know if that's what's happening now, but it sounds to me like it's like a very small piece of a larger puzzle.
Well, this
we
morning,
just can't see.
Right before we got started, like I was talking about, that we need to talk about people who would otherwise just like be swept under the rug.
Yeah.
Henry likes to watch MSNBC. So
is that your dog?
Yeah, he's got a huge crush on Chris something or other. I don't know. He won't have his breakfast unless he can watch her.
I'm the same way.
It's really weird. He won't. He's strange. Anyway, on MSNBC,
I'm the same way.
So on all of the news channels, they're talking about the Americans who were kidnapped in Mexico. But on MSNBC,
is that recent?
Yeah, 2 of them
2 days ago, yeah,
and 2 of them were just returned, and that's the big story on every news station right now. So they were talking about that, and then they interrupted for Merrick Garland was doing a press conference about.
Ooh, do tell.
Apparently the DOJ has been investigating the Louisville Metropolitan Police Department, and which is awesome. Apparently, like, they didn't just let the Breonna Taylor case go. They decided to launch a big investigation, and it turns out that, I mean, the search warrant doesn't fucking matter, because the search warrant wasn't go shoot her in her bed.
Right.
But it turns out the search warrant itself was bullshit, and that the officers who got the search warrant knowingly lied. It was all lies.
Wow.
But I knew that. Yeah.
So also in this search, they turned up the obvious things, basically, that they treat Black people, disabled people like shit. They don't investigate rape or sexual assault. They've been filming themselves throwing drinks at people.
Wait, the Louisville police?
Yeah.
Yeah.
they call Black people all sorts of things that I don't need to repeat.
Like this is privately within their ranks they're doing this, or like out on the streets when they're patrolling and
out on the streets.
like on
All
their
of the
body
above.
cams, they're doing all this shit.
They're
above.
filming themselves like intentionally. Like, this is funny. Watch me
Like
throw
put it on TikTok kind of a.
Yeah, except I guess they just show their cop buddies. But yeah, like watch me throw a big gulp at this kid. Like,
That's so fucked up.
right. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I'm glad he's like up here telling this, you know. Let's see what actually gets done about it. But thank you. But I like to know what's also going on Fox News. So I switched to Fox News.
Oh yeah.
Also showing you press conference, but it's not that press conference. It's Lindsey Graham talking about how because of these Americans who were kidnapped in Mexico, which apparently was a case of mistaken identity.
But Fox was using that to
Right.
say that
Right,
that the Biden administration, these people getting kidnapped and killed in Mexico is the Biden administration's fault because they haven't secured the borders and all of the cartels.
We're supposed to secure inside Mexico too.
Yes, that was what Lindsey Graham was suggesting, was that our military should be going into Mexico.
Wow.
He does realize that's another country altogether.
Yeah, we should invade Mexico now.
Trump already told us that
on all the other channels, they're talking about the lawsuit against Fox and Rupert Murdoch's testimony about all of the Hannity and all of those people knew full well that all of the election fraud stuff was bullshit, but they were promoting it anyway because they were afraid that their viewers would go to Newsmax or OAnon or one of the other. And so all of this stuff is coming out. All the other news channels are talking about that.
I was hoping we'd get to that later on, but I wanted to hear the rest of this thing about Mexico.
Go.
It was just on one station, we've got Merrick Garland talking about what's been happening to the people of Louisville in our
police
country.
abuse.
And then on Fox News, we have Lindsey Graham talking about how we need the military to be going into Mexico to fight the drug cartels. So
the military attacking Black and brown people is good on Fox News, and then on the other, everybody else is like, oh wait, we need to be watching this a little bit better because we're abusing people.
Right, and the guest anchor on Fox was a veteran. She didn't say like what branch or anything, but she was a military veteran and was saying that.
Was that the blonde chick with the glasses?
No, a Black woman.
Okay.
So Fox gets a Black person to pretty much toe the line of white supremacy.
They do like to bring somebody on in the morning.
And Trump told us, though, that it was all criminals coming over. So if it weren't for his border wall, Mexico wouldn't have any criminals left, and then these people wouldn't have been abducted.
This veteran guest did not at any point really explain what she was talking about, but repeatedly said that the Biden administration is breaking the law and needs to basically because there shouldn't be like states shouldn't have any responsibility with the border. It should all be the military, and the military should be able to go into Mexico.
So what happened to the states' rights thing that they're always preaching? That's one. Number two, I do not understand why these people are not intelligent enough to realize that their politicians are fucking idiots, because we cannot send our military into Mexico unless we want to declare war on the country of Mexico. What the fuck?
just
talking
like
about.
fuck.
Well, we've also got the bill that's getting passed, I guess, regarding like policing in DC. That Democrats are pissed about because they are saying that DC should have its own.
DC should be a state, is what
Right.
they're trying to do.
And that DC should be
Right.
policing itself. But then the Republicans are saying, like, no, we got to handle this. And I'm like, what? Who's
Republicans do not
places?
want it to happen because most of the people that live there are Democrats.
Yeah,
And
you make
vote- and
Guam,
vote
Puerto
Democratic.
Rico, and
Right.
you make Guam, Puerto Rico, and DC states, which they should be states. They have all the rights of citizens.
Yep.
You make those things states, though, and Democrats have a big majority.
Huge majority.
And they're brown skinned.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can't have that. They're trying to push that out everywhere they can. So, I mean, so the people getting kidnapped in Mexico, like they just were taken into custody because they thought they were someone else and then they let them go?
Oh, no.
No.
It
It wasn't by the government.
It was like cartel folks
Right.
did not, like, thought they were somebody else, pulled up and, like, hit their truck, jumped out and started shooting at them, killed 2 of them, grabbed the other 2, dragged them off, and, like, we had assumed that they were probably dead, but we're trying to get them back and finally managed to get them back. And I think that one of them is in the hospital and not good.
That sounds like one of the younger cartels that haven't really got their shit together, because usually they're pretty good at kidnapping people, and if they want to kill you, they kill you.
Yeah.
They don't just kill accidentally 2 people and then take the other 2. They just basically take all of you and just say,
Oh, sorry guys, we thought you were somebody else. You can leave now.
yeah, exactly.
Oops, our bad. I mean, what has destabilized the Mexican government in the first place? Like, to create the situation where there are cartels. Who's to blame for that?
Well, yeah, I mean, they were also
Zapata.
We could talk about that for hours.
The biggest drug, like the biggest drug trafficking problem is Americans bringing drugs from Mexico, not cartels sending Mexican immigrants with drugs.
Here's a fun
lot
fact.
of the problems that Mexico has is because of the United States.
There are more illegal Americans in Mexico than there are illegal Mexicans in the U.S.
That's not what I'm talking about, John.
I know.
The problem is, first of all, a lot of those immigrants that came to the United States came over because American ranchers and farmers wanted them to come and pick the cheap, do cheap labor for them, so they didn't have to worry about paying, especially when the unions started getting big. That's one thing.
Cesar Chavez
perpetuated this myth of these illegals coming over and stealing jobs, but they were the ones that actually were encouraging it and still encourage it to this fucking day. You can go almost in any country, any city in the United States and find illegals working there because the people that hire them want cheap labor and don't want to have to pay decent wages.
Right. They are not stealing our jobs.
Right.
The employers are giving them away.
Right there. And now you're not even talking about all the land that we stole from Mexico and the genocide from Indians and Mexicans and everything else. So, we sit there and try to look back and say, well, Mexico's a fucked up mess, but we don't want to take any responsibility for the fact that we actually helped create some of that mess ourselves. And that's not even talking about how many of their government officials we have bribed and pressured and done all this other shit to. It's ridiculous. Just one other thing, just to add the icing on the cake, one of the biggest cartels, the Zeta cartel, used to be the special forces of the Mexican army that the United States went in and trained to be like their version of the Green Beret or Delta Force. Those guys ended up leaving the Mexican government because they weren't paid enough and became a cartel. So we actually helped to that problem too.
Well,
We're
No, she's
really
saying
good
they're
at that.
militarian.
Lindsey Graham also like then just went on and on and on about fentanyl and like that fentanyl is the problem.
And heroin.
Like
and-
fentanyl can be a huge problem. I am super not denying that.
But that we're
But,
blaming Mexico for fentanyl.
well, yes, he's blaming Mexico for fentanyl, and he said that fentanyl is the leading cause of death for Americans between 18 and 45. And this is like, it's not even a statistic.
That doesn't seem true.
No, it is absolutely not true. It's just a tweet from a Texas congresswoman, Beth Van Dyne or something. Anyway, it is not even close to true. The leading causes of death for people between 18 and 45 are cancer, heart disease, auto accidents, and COVID. So
Not suicide? That's good.
Suicide is no. I think suicide is up there somewhere. For not necessarily 18 to 45, but
Yeah.
and then unintentional drug overdose is like
Pretty
drug
low.
overdose and suicide, whatever, are close up there. But like even if all drug overdoses were fentanyl, it still would not be up there with COVID, cancer, heart disease, and auto accidents.
I mean, I think, I mean, really, like what this transitions to, and I think we want to talk about before we run out of time, it also is just like the misinformation that continues to be perpetuated by so-called news in this country. And like, they're not gonna, they're not gonna stop. I mean, like the footage that was turned over of the January 6th protests to Fox has now been propagandized and turned into this rhetoric of like, it was a peaceful protest. Look at these selected shots. And it's like, from having that bullshit from Tucker Carlson to having Lindsey Graham fill up airspace, pretty much trying to find talking points to then blame that are lies, to then blame on the Biden administration, while actual real stuff is happening in this country, it's deplorable.
John Stewart just did an interview here. I don't know if any of you saw it, with one of the congressmen from it was either Texas or Florida. I don't remember which. And he was the guy is pushing for what I think it was Florida. Is pushing for that. That's the note I sent about the bullets versus drag queens, about the dangers to our children. How dangerous it is to have them exposed to a drag queen reading them a story in the library. And so John Stewart says to the guy, so you're telling me that more children are killed every year by guns than automobile accidents, than cancer, than anything else. And you are 100% concerned about protecting the children against drag queens reading them stories, but you don't give a shit about guns killing kids. And so, the guy is just didn't know what to say and just kind of shut up from that point on.
Well, here's
it's
the thing that freaks me out, John, because I agree with you 100%. What freaks me out is that I can understand Fox and some of these other news stations going out and selling bullshit. They're already claiming that they're entertainment, and they're not telling the truth, and we don't have the Fair Doctrine Act, so whatever.
right.
But one thing we do have, when you get to be a senator or a congressman or any government official, you take a fucking oath. And so to have Lindsey Graham and anybody else that gets on the air and tells a fucking obvious lie or says something that's so fucking stupid that it makes your eyes water, to me, that's a criminal offense. And that's where I get pissed off at the American people. If you want to listen to the news, that's fine. But when you have somebody who's obviously telling a lie and they're a government official and they swore an oath to defend this country and do what's best for this country, and they're not, you got to do something about that. And Lindsey Graham telling bullshit like that, he's either deliberately telling a lie or he's so fucking stupid he should have never gotten elected in the first place.
We had a president that told over 40,000 lies, documented lies during
we
his.
elected him, and he was a fucking liar before we elected him. We knew
Yeah.
that was coming.
Yeah,
No one's really held to account for this oath, right? I mean, it's kind of an honor system and honor among politicians.
well, isn't that why the ethics committees are, you know, the Senate and House ethic committees are there?
Joke.
It's to, you know, I mean, that's the intent of those committees, is to hold those individuals responsible for their actions. And
I
They've
just
been
wonder-
working real hard lately, huh?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, we're training the AI. I mean, and this is kind of a side shot, but like we're training the AI on like content and human behavior for it to respond and tell us the answers to things. But it's like, if it got a dose of what's happened in the past 5 years in this country, it would be like, there is no answer. There is no truth. There is no way to prove that anything is actually right or wrong, or that anything ever happened or didn't. It's all arbitrary. It's all subjective. And
It's a
there's
simulation.
Well, and I mean, and I think that like that's the rhetoric that all of these people are pushing, is like to try to convince people not only that they're not lying, they're beyond that. They're like, lying and truth aren't even concepts. Like that's not even a concept. Like
Alternate facts.
yeah, there's no facts, there's no lying, there's no truth.
What was
Not a
that?
concept.
Rudy
was a-
Giuliani, facts aren't facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truth isn't truth.
Oh, truth
Yeah.
isn't truth. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're,
Yeah,
so they're
so you get
basically
people
saying,
confused. Like
yeah,
No, they're basically
the
saying-
only point that you should be making is that you should be able to say whatever you want to project your ideology on somebody else.
A lie is as good as the truth if you can get somebody to believe it.
That's
Well, they just don't
I don't remember where that quote came from, but
They don't even care about the truth or facts. Like the Texas court had, like they had all of the information that like a woman is 12 times more likely to die carrying a like carrying to term than from an abortion. They had all of the statistics on all of these things, and like they had it all. They knew all of these things that we try to tell people,
but they don't care.
it wasn't like it wasn't like they didn't know or something.
Yeah, but you're talking about it. This is, to me, that's a totally different subject. You're talking about religious views trumping over facts.
I mean,
'Cause
I don't
that
think
is.
I don't think it's a religious view though. Like I think that you could have this as
It's a control issue. That's
right.
all it is.
If you were really young, then maybe like if you were say like Ariel's age, younger maybe, and your parents probably even younger than Ariel, then maybe your parents raised you to think that like Christians don't believe in abortion. But like prior to Reagan's presidency, like churches helped people get abortions. Like
yeah, but the ideology has changed, and now abortion has become not only a political issue but a religious component, especially of like,
but if you're older, you grew up like you didn't grow up with Christians don't get abortions. No, it was like
no, it's become a thing though now, and it is a thing now, and it is I mean, it never was a thing, but it is a thing now, and plenty of
But it's more of a
Christians now will tell you.
I think anybody over a certain age who claims to be against abortion for religious reasons is completely full of shit, unless maybe they're Catholic. then maybe I will give you like a hall pass. But unless you're Catholic and you're claiming that you don't believe in abortion for religious reasons, I think you're completely full of shit and you're just like playing the Fox News game or something.
But doesn't the
Uh,
Jewish faith support abortion?
Yeah, and so do
they're-
Mormons. So does
Yeah,
everybody.
it's the mother, the fetus is not an entity until it is born.
The only
And
reason
if it's
I
a
bring
threat
it
to
up,
the
though-
mother's life, or if there's something wrong with, the fetus, that you're basically bound by your beliefs to
The
do
only
something
reason
about
I
it.
bring it up is because of the evangelical Christians who really pushed that and made it a political issue. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's
No, you're right
maybe I didn't
there.
say it the right way. It's not a religious issue, but they pushed it and made it a political issue because of their religious beliefs. They're the driving force behind that bullshit.
Well, and it's about control, and underneath it, it's like taking away women's rights, and it is a bigger theme of like returning to the way that it was before women and Black people had rights. Like let's take it back to when all the white people were in charge and when this was a Christian
But
country.
it's not white people. It's old white guys,
Yeah, old
because
white
they
guys.
want the power. They're being threatened.
They're subservient. They're subservient wives who exist merely to crank out children.
Yeah.
And be the homemaker.
I mean, before any of this, like this was already a dangerous country to have a baby in. Like I said, you're 12 times more likely to as a woman to die carrying a baby to term than from that's not like a dangerous pregnancy. Like that's any pregnancy. You are 12 times more likely to die from carrying your child to term than from having an abortion. Yeah, like we're just,
You know what the cruelest part of that is?
Sorry?
You know what the cruelest part of that is? Because you're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%. The cruelest part of that is they want you to have that baby, but they refuse to do anything about
after it's born.
After the baby's born, they don't give a fuck about it.
Yeah.
And I find that the most cruel belief ever.
But
without abortions, we wouldn't have stem cells.
Is the issue?
What'd you say, Rachel?
Go ahead.
Without abortions, we wouldn't have all these stem cells to do this revolutionary cancer treatment.
There's this weird billionaire out there who actually is in prison now, but was paying for women's abortions if they would allow him to have the stem cells. Fucking weirdo. Anyway,
that is weird. I mean, it's hard to get that
with the stem cells. That's not. I wouldn't say it was weird if he's doing something with them for the good of the world.
He was using them for himself, but anyway.
Oh, okay.
But that way, wait. The investigations or whatever he was doing for himself would still benefit humanity.
Yeah, no, that was not one of the bad things he was doing.
Right.
He was doing other stuff. But
well, he's a billionaire,
but yeah, the messed up thing, Dirk, is a good, I have no idea what percentage, I don't know if anybody knows, but a large proportion of the children who would not be born because their mothers would choose abortion, those are the children who are going to have very difficult lives that are going to be cripplingly expensive, even to a family that's not below the poverty line or something. Even a middle-class family, it will destroy them.
I mean, fortunately, if people could see the good that the Biden administration is doing, it's they're pumping federal money into middle class and low class support. They're trying to increase the food stamps benefits. They're trying to increase child care and paid leave for maternity time. And it's they're really, really trying to help people and families because it's really difficult to afford having children. I mean, and even if the motivation behind that is that then those children will grow up and pay taxes, but no country wants to have a diminishing population because it's not good for money. And I think on top of it, when money talks, because we're talking about abortion, you know, Walgreens refusing to sell abortion medication has gotten them their, you know, contracts for the future of working in the state of California denied by our governor. And so it's like, you know, what speaks is like money in the end. And it's like, you know, if a company starts discriminating against providing medication for women, like they're not going to be able to come to this state. And it's like, you know, it's like, I do think money talks. And so like,
Yeah.
at least that, you know.
I have 2 prescriptions that can't be can't be transferred. So I will pick those up next week, and then my doctor's gonna write those to another pharmacy. As
Boycott
well
Walgreens.
my other 16 prescriptions will be transferred to another pharmacy, and most of my prescriptions are over $1,000 a month. So
Good job.
yeah, I'm gonna make a little dent in that, and
Yeah, that's 12 grand a year.
we will no longer be a oh no, that's yeah, 12 for one prescription. Yeah, we're no longer going to be a Walgreens family. And
Good for you.
I encourage anybody else to do the same.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
John, you said you wanted to, before we left today, you wanted to talk about Jimmy Carter.
Oh, I talked about him in the beginning.
Okay.
It completely freaked me out that he was a Bob Dylan fan.
Well,
We have
it
to
was
clip the
funny
beginning.
when
We have to
Julia
clip the
made his
beginning.
comment.
What's that?
Make sure
Yeah, you have to
trim
go
the
back to the
beginning.
beginning if you want to hear about that.
No, I'm saying you got to trim the beginning.
I literally saw the Jimmy Carter episode of King of the Hill last night, where Bobby thinks he's Jesus.
Ah,
Well, the first thing I thought of when I saw that was that I remember Julia mentioned something on Facebook, and she said that, you know, he's been around 45
years
since he was president, and we never talk about him. And I just think it's because he was actually vilified when he left because of the Iran crisis and all that mess that happened, which wasn't really his fault.
he was one of our most underrated presidents ever.
I believe so.
He put solar panels.
Sad.
Put solar panels on the White House roof.
Yeah.
Ahead of his time.
And Reagan tore him off.
One of the things that he
What?
did
Yeah.
that was really fascinating to me is that when you see what he's done since he left the presidency and see what kind of a good person he was, you can understand that a lot of the things that he did while he was a president, he was doing it from his heart. He was doing it from
For the good of the American people.
Yeah, he was doing it from the goodness of the American people. He was trying to shape us into a nation that did shit for the right reasons at the right time.
Right.
So
that's why he was
think
not
he's an amazing
reelected.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To end on a lighter note, can I real quick share my couple of nature-related puff pieces?
Sure.
Let's see. So
you're not going to show the mushroom again, are you?
Well, so scientists in the University of West England just built a mushroom computer, which is cool. And then orcas have adopted a pilot whale.
I saw that.
Apparently has not been seen before. And the UN just signed a pact basically to protect international waters and set up a structure by which that can be done, and by which protected zones can be established in international waters, and deep sea research will be shared. Basically, agreement.
I don't think that's a puff piece. Like,
well, yeah, it is pretty huge.
Internationally working together to protect 30% of the world's oceans and overfishing, which is like a huge problem. So that's like a huge, amazing thing.
Yeah, I just got 2 comments on that. Number one, everybody showed, I saw a thing on Facebook the other day, and everybody shows a picture of the world, and they show it with North America, South America, Europe, and all that shit. Somebody showed the other side of the world.
It's all water.
It's fucking water.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But the other point I want to make is that I don't think that's a puff piece either. A mushroom computer, that's not something you just kind of mention and gloss over, man. Give me some facts.
It was
You're a physicist. Give me some shit.
Listen, if you
Well,
had
it's basically
read the
just using-
Hitchhiker's
it's
Guide to the
using-
Galaxy, you'd already know about the mushroom computer.
So mushrooms use action potentials similar to neurons. So it's basically just using mycelium fibers in place of wires, pretty much, and using action potentials in place of ones and zeros.
That's fascinating, man.
It really is.
I thought it was
almost,
pretty
it's
cool.
kind of scary too.
It was at the
Let's
unconventional.
hope that AI doesn't find out about that.
Well, it could actually be helpful for the development
Yeah.
of AI, or potentially AI that functions a bit more like a human brain.
I hate
And
to tell you
learn.
this, but AI would look at that and say, you know what? Instead of me waiting for some human to give me some shit, I can actually grow it and add more to my potential.
Yeah, if you can control the mushroom to create the
Yeah.
circuitry, I mean, you don't, and to not need wires, I mean, that's a huge benefit.
It was,
So
from
the
the,
Earth becomes one big AI.
So cool.
it was out from the Unconventional Computing Laboratory at the University of West England.
So awesome.
That's fascinating and scary.
All right,
Yay.
last words, folks, because we're out of here.
It's International Women's Day, so everything's okay now. Day.
Thank God.
Yay,
I have
women.
four daughters, so every day is International Women's Day.
Congratulations, women. Today is your day.
Yes.
You done good.
Way to have 2 X chromosomes.
Hopefully none of us will die in childbirth
Right.
today.
Thank
I know,
you,
right?
lady, for not killing us in our sleep.
All right.
Anytime.